After India smashed Pakistan in the recent war, now the Indian Air Force is staring the Chinese panda in the face with the highest fighter jet airbase in the entire world. The Indian Air Force Chief A.P. Singh has inaugurated the world's highest fighter jet base at Nyoma along the Tibet border in Ladakh. Situated just 30 to 35 kilometers from the LAC, the Nyoma Air Base has a 3-kilometer long runway and hardened shelters to host Rafale fighter jets, the formidable Sukhoi 30 NKIs, high-altitude specialist, the MiG-29s, as well as military transport aircraft as large as the C-17 Globemaster. But what's the real urgency to bolster defense along the LAC? This comes amid shocking reports that the Chinese PLA has been boosting its military infrastructure all along the line of control from Ladakh to Arunachal, driven by Mao Zedong's belief that political power grows out the barrel of a gun. The Chinese have built new missile defenses, hardened underground shelters, massive new military bases. It has stationed its stealth fighter jets and constructed new border villages. All this after the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes. We'll tell you all about China's massive military buildup near the LAC and how India is countering it. So stay with us. With Nyoma, the Indian Air Force fighter jets will have a bird's eye view now of all Chinese activities, ready to strike at a moment's notice. The threat of the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes reigniting remains high, despite high-profile meetings between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, first in Kazan, Russia, and then at the SCO summit earlier this year in China. But the CCP must remember, this is not 1962, when Indian political leadership was caught off guard by the Chinese dual game. Now India has played its own trump card. The Nyoma Air Base has been activated. This is truly an engineering and strategic marvel which even China cannot equal. Trust deficit on the ground remains high, claimed a defense source to Times of India as India began operations from Nyoma. Situated at 13,700 feet above sea level in Ladakh, where oxygen thins and the Himalayan mountains literally scrape the sky. Barely 30-35 kilometers from the India-Tibet border, it will enable swift response and deep strikes in Chinese bases in Tibet as well as Xinjiang, if and when the need arises. Located deep within the Changtang region, along the upper reaches of the Indus River, temperatures here can plunge to as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius. Now, Nyoma Air Base has become India's iron shield at the northern frontier. Massive deployment of troops has become the new normal in Ladakh ever since the 2020 clashes, despite the so-called demilitarization from the front lines. Defense sources told Times of India, quote, "With no de-escalation along the LAC, troops will continue to be forward deployed for the 6th successive winter since multiple Chinese incursions into eastern Ladakh in April and May 2020, unquote. On the surface though, things seem to be improving both geopolitically and economically. The two nuclear-armed Asian giants, India and China, are realigning their ties after the 2020 border clashes for the first time. New Delhi has removed restrictions on Chinese goods and imports entering Indian markets after nearly 4 years of stalled clearances. The Modi government has also lifted its ban on direct flights from China. But until there's a permanent border demarcation, mistrust will persist. China has a habit of poking India by renaming places in Arunachal Pradesh and making claims to that Indian border state. Chinese troops also make salami-slicing attempts in the Ladakh sector. With Nyoma, India is now sending a loud message. Bharat is now playing on the front foot and is not afraid to put its frontline assets right on the border. Prime Minister Modi was originally expected to inaugurate the Nyoma Air Base this October. However, soon after, some pictures of Sukhoi 30s allegedly functioning from this forward base starting doing rounds on social media. The old mud runway has now been transformed into a 2.7-kilometer long concrete runway, enabling both fighter jet operations as well as heavy transport aircraft to operate easily, even in difficult conditions. The project also includes a dispersal area, turning pads, an air traffic control or ATC complex, aircraft hangars, watchtowers, a crash bay, and accommodation facilities for personnel. After the 1962 war, Nyoma was first reactivated as an ALG when medium-lift AN-32 transport aircraft first landed there in September 2009. Following the 2020 clashes, the Defense Ministry under Rajnath Singh finally decided to turn Nyoma into a fully operational airbase. Launching the project in 2021 under BRO's Project Himalayas at an estimated cost of 220 crore rupees. An airfield here offers several operational and logistics advantages to the Indian Air Force. With the location south of the Pangong Tso Lake and close proximity to both Demchok and Depsang plains, the final two flashpoints, it provides the Indian military the ability to respond swiftly to any border threats. Adding to the strategic value, the region known as Demchok Funnel is one of the few stretches along the LAC in Ladakh which is suitable for mechanized warfare. The updated airbase will allow Rafales and Sukhoi 30s to reach any flashpoint immediately and thus establish early air power advantage in case of a conflict. Since it can now support C-17 Globemasters and IL-76 aircraft as well as heavy lift helicopters, it can fly in tanks, troops and missile systems directly to the front line. AN-32 and C-130 Super Hercules aircraft have been operating from Nyoma regularly for ferrying troops and bringing supplies and equipment. Unmanned aerial vehicles as well as attack helicopters like the Apache have been deployed to Ladakh since the 2020 standoff. Surveillance and intelligence gathering operations along the LAC will also get a boost. The decision showcases India's resolve to face nature's toughest conditions but still secure its borders, representing a bold step forward in high-altitude warfare preparations. Challenges, however, go hand in hand with Nyoma due to its altitude and challenging location. It is a region where geography itself is a weapon. Temperatures here drop to -40 degrees Celsius in winters. Heavy snow and strong winds batter this region. While Nyoma is the world's highest fighter jet airbase, it is still not India's highest airbase in Ladakh. Nyoma has become India's third highest airfield in Ladakh region after Doorstep Beg Oldie, the world's highest strip at 16,800 feet, and Phukche at 14,300 feet. However, those two do not host fighter jets, but can still operate military transport aircraft as well as helicopters. Rarefied air at these altitudes in this region degrades engine performance of any aircraft, requiring longer runways while reducing payload capacity by as much as 50%. This is a challenge which even the Chinese PLA faces while operating fighter jets in Tibet. India, though, has an advantage since it has multiple supporting air bases on the plains close by, which offer full payload capacities. Thus, the Indian Air Force will hold a strategic advantage in case of any future air battles. Storing fuel, oils and lubricants in extreme temperatures and integrity of certain electronic components and avionics is also a huge challenge here. Nyoma's proximity to the LAC makes it vulnerable to Chinese artillery, tactical drones, as well as electronic warfare. Defense experts have pointed out how its remote location and limited road access make logistics harder, especially if supply routes come under attack. However, on the other side, satellite imagery shows a new Chinese air defense complex taking shape, comprising command and control buildings, barracks, vehicle sheds, munitions storage, and radar positions. Construction activity has been ramped up in the eastern part of Pangong Lake in Tibet, roughly 110 kilometers from the main friction point in the 2020 border clashes. However, the most striking yet dangerous features of this newly built Chinese facility are retractable roofs for transporter erector launchers or TEL vehicles that can carry and fire missiles, including air defense systems. All source analysis assessed that these sites would be sufficient to support the HQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile system. First identified by researchers at US-based geointelligence firm All Source Analysis, the firm also discovered a replica of this complex at Gar County, 65 kilometers away from Nyoma Air Base. Independent satellite imagery from US-based space intelligence company Vanter showcased an image on September 29th of roofs on at least one such launch position at Gar County, possibly revealing launchers underneath. It said in a note, quote, "The covered missile launch position features a roof with hatches allowing the launchers to remain concealed and protected while firing through the hatches when opened," unquote. The relatively short distance between Gar County and Nyoma Air Base in India indicates a future war scenario of more direct, shorter range attacks including fighter jets, armed drones and ground raids. The line of control or the LAC is witnessing an emerging trend of construction of hardened shelters with fully enclosed hangars by the Chinese PLA. Key Chinese airfields such as Hotan, Kashgar, Shigatse, Nyingchi and Hoping now host advanced aircraft. Some of them have J-20 stealth fighters, as well as bombers, drones and surveillance planes. Most advanced Chinese J-20 stealth fighter jets have been stationed only 150 kilometers away from India's Sikkim border. Satellite images captured 6 J-20 stealth aircraft at this airbase in Tibet. These have been deployed at an airport in Shigatse, which is used for both military as well as civilian needs. The presence of J-20 advanced aircraft poses a great threat to Indian national defense strategy. The deployment is outside its normal sphere of operations because these J-20 aircraft are primarily present near China's eastern coast to counter the threat of advanced American stealth fighters. China's deployment of advanced J-20s is strategic. Shigatse Airport in Tibet lies just 290 kilometers away from India's Hasimara Air Base in West Bengal, where the Indian Air Force bases its second squadron of 18 Rafale fighter jets. In the event of a potential border skirmish, China's extensive military infrastructure can help Beijing launch strategic strikes. Yet the CCP has a two-pronged strategy. China is also building multiple border villages to lay a permanent claim to Tibet and the LAC with India. Once empty valleys for centuries have now become home to these dual-purpose Chinese outposts. Xi Jinping labels these as border guardians to serve as eyes and ears of the PLA. Beijing has reportedly strategically placed at least one military and dual-use infrastructure village near every accessible Himalayan pass that borders India. Geospatial imagery expert Damien Simon highlighted the process of village settlement in the region, which includes multiple double-story buildings alongside administrative offices and electrification efforts. Retired Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, a former Northern Army commander, stated that the site can be used by the PLA for dual purpose to enhance civilian facilities and simultaneously be well equipped to support the Chinese military operations in any conflict. China's unstoppable and rigorous construction near the border to create border defense villages in areas claimed by India is merely a way to bolster its claims and weaken India's bargaining position in the long-standing conflict. The rival armies are set to remain forward deployed for the 6th successive winter in some of the highest and harshest battlefield conditions in the world, even after alleged military disengagement at Depsang and Demchok. 23rd round of Corps Commander level meeting was also held recently at the Trishul-Moldo border meeting point in eastern Ladakh on the 25th of October, where both sides agreed to continue to use existing mechanisms to resolve any ground issues along the border and maintain stability. India had airlifted well over 50,000 troops to eastern Ladakh along with heavy weapon systems like tanks, howitzer artillery guns and surface-to-air missile systems, all during the 2020 Galwan Valley conflict. The Indian Defence Ministry has also approved a plan to build large number of military establishments in Ladakh, including forward aviation bases like the one in Nyoma, along with missile storage sites and artillery regiments. 33 defense projects have been cleared by the National Board of Wildlife with certain conditions. The roadmap includes construction of new road links to Daulat Beg Oldie, India's highest airstrip close to the Karakoram range, setting up new ammunition storage facilities and creation of a dedicated base for helicopters and unmanned aerial vehicles or armed drones. Other key projects include a forward aviation base at Shiok, housing an army regiment at Niddar, artillery regiment field hospital at Bogdang, and an artillery regiment at Skampuk. Apart from multiple facilities to house the troops and engineers, there will also be a short-range surface-to-air missile storage site near Leh and a dedicated site to hold the helicopters and operate the UAVs at Partapur. Last year, India also revealed plans to build a second runway in Leh located at over 10,000 feet. This will be the first high-altitude airbase in the country to have two runways. The strategy is to boost Indian Air Force's operational capabilities to avoid being in a tight spot against the Chinese Air Force over the Himalayas. But what do you believe? Will the world's highest fighter jet airbase at Nyoma give India an advantage over China in case of a conflict? Leave a comment with your opinion, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News.